Hi guys, my name is Sarah, and today I will be showing you my presentation for the children's book lesson. So the ideas behind mine was how students can relate colors to emotions, and how when looking at a painting, artists use colors to create those emotions, and also specifically how can we use these colors to create emotions, to make the viewer feel emotions, all while creating art specifically with the subject of nature. So my idea was based on Claude Monet's art, and I even was fortunate enough to find a book based on his art that honestly made it in a really digestible way for kids, and even made like a fun story. So really just making that aspect of learning about art into a fun lesson that kids can enjoy. And I definitely think that the grade level, this would probably be appropriate for third grade, just with some of the content, like in terms of some of the historical backgrounds that I gave for Monet. But I honestly feel like this lesson could be slightly altered to fit any grade level. And yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to start. So basically, our lesson is how to use emotions to create nature art just like Monet. So to start, we're going to be reading the book The Magical Garden of Claude Monet by Laurence Anholt. And I really want us, as we're reading, to pay attention to the art styles and the backgrounds and all the different things we can see in the back, such as like the landscapes or the settings that these characters experience. Let's start. So, I wish we had a garden, said Julie. She looked down at the drab river which ran through the city. Even Louis the Greyhound was bored with being inside. As soon as I finish this painting, said Julie's mother, I'll take you on a journey to the most wonderful garden in the world. It belongs to my old friend, the painter Claude Monet. They took a big black train beside the twisting river, far out of the city. Julie ran a corner and almost knocked over a big man with a spade. The man wore a straw hat and had a huge white beard. Oh, said Julie, I am looking for my dog. Are you the gardener? I suppose I am, said the man. Come and look. One day these tiny seedlings will grow into big flowers, but a gardener has to be very patient, just like a painter. Then Julie realized, You are Claude Monet, she gasped. Yes, laughed the old man, I am Claude Monet. Together they searched for Louis along the shady path, deeper and deeper into the magical garden, until it seemed as if they had left the real world behind. They turned the handle on a rickety gate and stepped inside. It was like a garden inside a garden, a wild, wet, watery garden where willows bowed over a silent pool. Together they crossed the green bridge. Now on this page I really want us to be taking notice of the scene that's around them and the watercolors and just especially even the colors too. Especially on this page, I want us to look at the colors and look at the art and look at the brush strokes. So when they rode across the pond, it felt like floating in Mr. Monet's paintings. Julie heard the splash of the oars and birds calling in the trees. All around them, lilies sparkled like a midnight sky. When they reached the very middle of the pool, Monet stretched in the dark water and pulled out one flower, the biggest lily of all, as bright as a silver star. A little present from my water garden, he said. They took the train back to the city, and even Louis was tired. The garden seemed like a distant dream. Perhaps it's a little present from the water garden, she whispered, and as the city slept, she breathed in the sweet smell of the magical garden of Claude Monet. So that was the final page of the book, and first I want to introduce the artist, and this is actually who the book is about. So Claude Monet, he's not just a character in the book, he's actually a real person, and he lived almost 200 years ago. So he lived in the 1800s, and he lived and worked and painted a very long time ago. And he was also born in Paris, France, which is right where the Eiffel Tower is. And that's where he, like I said, did all of his paintings. And something interesting about Monet is like when we regularly think of artists, we think of them working in studios or specific places indoors that artists will work on their art. But something interesting about Monet is that he actually painted outside. So if he saw a beautiful sunset or a beautiful scene, he would take his canvas and all his paintbrushes and paint, and he would go outside and he would try to paint exactly to what he was seeing in real life. And over his time living, he created over 2,500 artworks, which is a lot, and I think that's very impressive. And something I want to note is that he also didn't use black paint. He said he didn't believe in it and that he believed in creating dark colors by combining colors. He just didn't believe in using black because he think that it would made his art emotionless. So you can see on the left there's a photo of what he really looked like when he was older with the gray beard. And on the right there is a self-portrait that he did. So these are a lot more of his artworks. I'm not going to talk about each and every one of them, but I definitely want everyone to be taking note of the colors, the brush strokes, and maybe how it starts to make you feel. So these are definitely a lot different from a lot of other artworks or artists, and he has his very own specific style, but you can see how they all kind of look somewhat similar. So the first question I want to ask everybody in this specific artwork that Monet painted is what colors are in this artwork? So I know when I look at it, I see a lot of blues mostly, I think is the biggest color here. There's some greens in the meadow or the cliffside, and I'm also seeing a lot of white. So keeping those colors in mind, I want us to now start thinking of what emotions are in this artwork. So I do understand that this question is a little bit harder and this might make us think a little bit more, but when I'm thinking back to the colors, I think I'm seeing a lot of blue. And when I see a lot of blue in art, sometimes it makes me feel very calm or peaceful. And something I want us to also do is maybe think about what we feel when we're looking at this art piece and possibly what the subjects, the two people on the cliff standing, might be feeling. So like I said, I definitely feel very calm because of all the relaxing colors. And I'm thinking maybe the subjects feel adventurous. They feel a sense of adventure because they're standing on this cliffside and they're looking at all the boats and like the huge sea out in front of them. And I'm also seeing a lot of green, which also makes me think of like nature and all those other things. So this is also another page from the book from earlier. Now I want us to think what emotions are in this artwork. So how this one looks a lot different to this one. So when I'm thinking about emotions with this one, because of the red colors and the dark colors, and the brush strokes are super crazy, they're all over the place, that makes me feel like maybe this was an angry painting, or a nervous painting, or maybe to use some more descriptive words, overwhelmed, anxious, or frustrated maybe. And like I said, we really just get that based on the colors and the crazy brush strokes. So now, I want us to start, once again, like really identifying our colors to emotions. So with this worksheet, the intention is, so we're going to identify the emotion and then color in the face with what emotion you think, what color you think goes with that emotion. So for example, when the first example, I could say sick. I think we think of green when we think of something sick or it feels like queasy. And I'll make this very clear, like, there are no right answers with this. This is all just up to your own personal beliefs. Maybe I think the color sad, I think sad is the color blue, but maybe for someone else they might think it's purple or maybe even like an orange. So there is no right answers. This is just how you feel and what color you would assign to each emotion. So once again, just to really reiterate our big idea, and what I really want us to understand is artists are inspired by emotions and feelings to create their art. And within that, we can see through a lot of Claude Monet's art that art does not have to be realistic. It does not have to, sometimes when we think of what makes art good or what's good art, we think that it's someone who makes art that's extremely realistic. And I'm not saying that that's not bad art. We're just sort of coming up with the concept that art does not have to be realistic. Good art does not have to be realistic. Good art can just provide you with a new perspective. And once again, like, artists use colors to convey feelings. So definitely seeing the relationships between our emotions and colors and how artists use those colors to make their viewers feel a certain way when looking at their art. Now, I do have another question. So my question for us now is, what's similar and what's different? So on the left, I have one of Monet's paintings, and on the right, I have his real-life inspiration. So I know I said earlier, he would actually go outside, and he would create art based on exactly what he was seeing. So I can instantly point out that something that's different is one's a photograph, and one's a painting. One looks definitely like a painting. You can see a lot of the brush strokes, which Monet, that was definitely something about his style. Something that's similar is the subject. We can see that the buildings look almost, the way the buildings look, the outline looks almost identical. And even that shadow, this shadow here, looks identical. So we can definitely see that that was his inspiration. So something that's similar is the subject. And another thing that's different is the colors. So on the photo on the right, we can definitely see a lot of purples, a lot of a light orange or a light yellow, and red, I would say. While on the left, there's a lot of blue. There's definitely a super vibrant yellow. And we can just see here, like, the colors are extremely different. So something that I want to talk about next is how he got his inspiration from reality, but his art didn't exactly look 100% realistic. So on the left, and here's another one of Monet's paintings. This is one of his most famous ones. And on the right, this is his real life inspiration for his painting. So we can see that things look a little different. Like, he added so many water lilies in the water here, and the trees. So in real life, when we're painting or drawing trees, what color do we think of? We instantly think of green. But if we look closely on Monet's paintings, he uses some purples and some blues and even some yellows, which is so different from what we would normally think the colors of a tree are. So now this is going to take us into our activity. So for our activity, we're going to be going outside, and what we need when we go outside is we're going to bring our feeling sheet so we can reference our sheet as we're creating our own art, and really just keeping our brainstorming earlier with us. We're going to need a clipboard that we're going to put a piece of paper into, because we're going to be drawing outside, so there's no tables. And just like Claude Monet, I really want us to be very expressive in what we're doing. So there is no requirement of what sort of thing that you are drawing with. There's no requirement for what you're going to do your art with. So we can do crowns, paint, watercolors, you could do markers, you could do even just with a pencil. But ideally, we would be putting some color in there. So you could do a pencil, but you would need to incorporate that with something that you would be able to make color out of. Or you could use it all at one time. So with all these things, we're going to go outside, sit outside, and we're going to look for a nature subject. So everyone can pick something different. This is totally up to you to pick what you want to draw or paint or do whatever. So definitely here's some brainstorming of, we could do a tree, we could do flowers, bushes, rocks, or even grass. Just honestly anything that we can, when we go outside, that we could find in nature. And something that I really want us to be thinking of while we're creating this is focusing on how the subject makes you feel, not how it looks. Like I said earlier, Monet also didn't use colors that are like real life. So you can make, like I said, that dandelion red or super crazy, or you can make a rainbow tree. And here are some examples of what I'm looking for. So you can see, like, these, each and every art piece here is totally different. So and even the subject's different. So even on the top right here, there was a lot of yellows in the sky and blues and greens in the sky. And like I said, this isn't supposed to follow reality. It's supposed to just make, just kind of get an expression out of how you feel, and not feeling like we have to be tied to reality when we create art, and really focus on, while we're creating art, using our emotions. So this is my example of this. It's a tree, and I just made the tree have a bunch of different rainbow parts, because I think trees are so beautiful and they're also unique and different. So I wanted to do a super cool color pattern. I also combined this, so I made the tree and the grass. The colors are in watercolor, and I did the outlines of everything in a black Sharpie. So I used multiple different mediums to create my art, and I sort of just had fun with it and wanted to really focus on enjoying the process and how I was feeling during the process, rather than focusing on the outcome. So after we go outside, something I would like to do is, on a sticky note, write a feeling you felt while creating your art. And once again, there is no right answers with this. You could say frustrated, calm, happy, angry, sad, peaceful, however you might be feeling on a sticky note, and stick it on the board, because I really want us to be reflecting on the process of creating our art, like I said previously, rather than the outcome. So that is all I have for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening, and yeah, thank you.